So I'm Steve Hassan, and thanks to John Flaherty, we chatted today about trying to do a last minute, gathering. If anyone had any questions or wanted to understand more about my background and where I'm coming from in terms of researching the people of praise in specific, and concerning Judge Barrett's nomination to the Supreme Court. I'm really uh, open to sharing what I know, answering questions. I can, briefly just say that I'm 66 years old. I'm a mental health professional. I've authored 4 books. I got interested in the subject of cults because I was recruited into the Moonies in 1974, and became a fanatic and recruited a lot of other people in it. And then I was exited after I fell asleep at the wheel of a van and drove into the back of a tractor trailer truck at 80 miles an hour. And my sister invited me to come convalesce, and she told my parents, and they hired some ex-Moonies. And then I woke up and realized that I was brainwashed, and I wanted to understand, how did this happen to me? And so I became very obsessed with learning about psychology and social psychology and Chinese communist brainwashing and how did that work. And that was one of the main things that helped me get out of the Moonies, was learning about communist brainwashing of the 50s. And I never planned to make this my life work, but it evolved that way. I lived through a lot of tragedies like Jonestown and the death of 913 people, 300, more than 300 were children. The problem is epidemic at this point of authoritarian mind control. And I'll just hold up a little flyer, but it's on my website, freedomofmind.com, under Learn About Undue Influence. If you think about ethical influence and a continuum to unethical influence, there are specific behaviors to identify any relationship or group, such as informed consent versus lying through withholding information, distorting information, or outright lies. Because one of the notions, especially with religion, it should be that you're choosing. It's not coercion, it's not manipulation, it's not high pressure tactics. It should be volitional, and you should be able to read what you want to read, talk to who you want to talk to, exit if you're not happy, ask questions, and have choice. And part of, in this model, I talk about behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. And I believe, John, you put it on the Facebook page, the handouts?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So, I'm just finishing a doctoral program. I just submitted my dissertation, and I did a study with over 1,000 people, and they rated the BITE model in terms of never to always, and we came out with a spectacularly significant result of control for BITE. So we're calling the construct the BITE model of authoritarian control, and it's meant to be a measure in the law, that we want to see in the law, that stops people or groups from coercing people and taking away their human rights. So,
Yay!
yay. And,
That would
I'm
be
a love
really
guy. I'm
amazing.
not into fear and guilt manipulation to make people dependent and obedient. I think, I do believe I'm a Jew. I belong to a temple. I like to pray. I like to chant. I like to sing. I like to study Torah. And if I don't go, I don't feel guilty. And, and there are lots of gay folks in my temple. And we have a woman rabbi. who leads our
Wonderful.
temple. So we're very progressive that way. But my work it really deals with can be a controlling relationship, an authoritarian family dynamic, can be a country, a dictatorship like China or Russia that institutes the BITE. And in particular, why I'm so excited to meet John and to connect with this Facebook group is just that I really want to do research on the people of praise, and in particular, I'm interested in hearing from people who've left the group more recently in the last 5 years, as opposed to what I've heard of 20 years ago or 30 years ago, because groups always say, we've changed, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Every mind control cult says that. And the question is, unless they've changed policies and it's written, it usually means that it was just PR maneuver. And so I'm interested. I've done a blog. I think you shared it with Coral and Lisa and Frank, the Catholic lawyer. And I'm thinking about doing another video if I can enlist former members of People of Praise that would like to go on the record. And I, in particular, would like to hear from people regarding the bite model and whether or not it resonates for their experience as well. So I'm not just going public and saying, well, 2 people said it
Right.
fits, or 3 people says it fits. Ideally, it would be great to have 30 people who say that it fits. And even if the 30 people don't want to give their name, but people who say, I've looked at it, here are the issues that I experienced. So that's one of my asks.
Well, that's great. As someone who was raised Catholic by Irish parents, I would have appreciated the bite model at a very early age, the use of manipulation and guilt, which is,
Yeah,
I
so I
think,
want to just comment that there's a difference between people born or raised in these groups versus people like myself who was recruited at age 19.
yeah.
And so I had a kind of fully formed identity and
Mhm.
value system, and then that got radicalized. And then when I got out, I had something to ground me. I do a lot of therapy work with people coming out of these who are born into these controlling, abusive environments where they're corporally punished, which is very damaging for normal, healthy child development, I might add. And I've done 2 blogs on the subject of the detrimental attributes of corporal punishment. Um, and it's forcing changes. It's making groups self-reflect and go, do we want do we want to institute a policy to be forthcoming when we're proselytizing or witnessing, or do we want to keep doing it the way we've been doing it for the last 20 or 30 years? Because I'm talking about it in a legal sense, about informed consent. And for me, with People of Praise, if somebody's asked to join it in 2020, my question is, are they told about Adrian Reamer's, book about being in it for 12 years and why he left it? And my guess is the group is not, and the recruiters are not talking about critics.
Absolutely not.
Right.
Nope.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I have not been part of People of Praise, but I've been part of a very, very similar organization. And any sort of negative conversations, like, it takes years to find those things. Like, if you were part of that group, they're not in any way discussed or ever really talked about.
Right. So, I mean, things changed. When I got out, it was 76, and in 95, the internet started, and things really shifted where people could start sharing their information. and they could start scanning, like the Jehovah's Witnesses could scan their old books, and the leadership would say, "Oh, we never prophesied the end of the world," and then we have their documents going 4 times they in writing they said the end of the world. You know what I mean? And it's caused a lot
Yeah.
of people to leave the Mormons and the JWs because the leadership of today is trying to rewrite history instead of like owning up to what really
Um,
happened.
One question I had just on, in terms of the Amy Coney Barrett stuff is, I actually wonder if there's like a PR firm or something behind what they're doing.
100%.
Um,
I
and
saw
I
an
wonder
ad
if
on
that's,
TV a couple of
yeah,
days
I wonder
ago.
if there's actually a way to like use that against this whole thing, to say like, if you feel like you need to put money towards PR to protect your image from the Christian group you're in, there's something wrong. Like, that's not what normal groups do. Like, so
Absolutely.
that's
Or
just a
scrubbing
thought I
your
had.
history with a group
Right.
from the internet because the media
Right.
is wanting to.
Yeah, and like, I mean, as far as I know, she's a founder's daughter. I can probably get a little more info on that, but like, she is very much what we would term a community kid from everything I've been able to see. But there's very much this like very polished, they got Reagan's speechwriter to write that like glowing article. Like, it just seems like such a huge effort is being put forward, and I wonder if that's almost something that could be pointed out as sort of a, hey, this is actually something she's doing, and that's not a normal behavior. So
Right, no, it's a very good point. And, when a group is really real and good, it should stand up to scrutiny. And,
exactly.
and what I've experienced so far with the people of praise is they do ad hominem attacks against the ex-members and the critics, and that's classic cult propaganda, disinformation tactics. Instead of talking about the issues, attack
Oh yeah.
Coral or attack
Oh,
Lisa.
absolutely. They definitely go for the personal attacks.
Yeah, and that's the opposite, as I understand it, of the New Testament and Jesus'
Yes, it is
teaching,
very much so. Yeah.
right? So
Right.
it's that
Personal experience.
hypocrisy.
Mhm.
Pence said this is an unfortunate attack on religion. It's
Right.
like, wait a minute,
No.
wait a
Well, and I
minute.
think John's point is really important, that this is not just, or like John and another friend of ours, like, this is not just your average Catholic prayer group. Like, they're trying to make it seem innocuous. They're trying to make it seem like this is just like, a group, like a Bible study, right? And it's
Yeah.
not. There's a covenant, there's a commitment that these people make willingly that goes way beyond a, a Bible study,
So
right?
I would challenge you, if you don't mind, Noel,
Sure,
on
please, yeah.
the willingly thing,
Well,
because
yeah, and that's another big question there, right? I would, and that's, well, willingly in the sense of they have to stand up in front of a group, and I don't think it's willing, but they would say it's willing. Does that make
well,
sense?
social psychology is
Mhm.
something I've studied
Which
extensively,
is
and there are
awesome.
all
Mhm.
these factors that go into.
Right. Into informed consent. Yeah. Yeah, I'm a therapist myself.
Oh, good,
Yep.
exactly. So, I mean, it's and for me, I want to state, excuse me, when I got out of the Moonies, I didn't know about Scientology. I mean, I had seen them on the streets recruiting. I didn't know about the Jehovah's Witnesses. I had seen them on the streets recruiting. But as I exited as a former cult member and started talking to other ex members, I started seeing parallels
Oh
of
yeah.
use.
Yep.
And um, my perspective got wider and wider and wider,
Yeah.
and I really think. Oh, and I wanted to say that it was, I think, around 1979 or 80 that a cult started in the Boston area called the Boston Church of Christ
Interesting. Okay.
by Kip McKean. It was an offshoot of Crossroads,
Okay. Mhm.
Chuck Lucas, and this shepherding discipleship
Oh, that stuff is
model,
scary.
and the master plan of evangelism by
Yep.
Robert Coleman. And so I've helped many people get out of shepherding discipling groups where you submit to your discipler as
Right.
if they were Jesus and they
Oh,
submit to theirs up the chain, up the
oh.
pyramid.
Sounds like a multi-level marketing scheme.
It is. I mean, those are cults too. So I
I
have,
agree. Yeah, no, I very much agree. Yeah, that's
this is one of
fantastic.
my models, and
Yeah,
most
that's
people
really
are
good.
out here on the fringes, but if you get into the middle
Right.
of it, it gets more and more authoritarian. And
That's
what you
fantastic.
know at this level, people here don't know this, and people
Right.
here don't
Exactly.
know this or that.
Right. Exactly. Yep. Well,
And
and
I say real religions, it should be the same doctrine from the top to the
yes,
bottom.
very much so. And I think that everyone is being told the same thing, at least at like a theological level. Yeah.
Mhm.
Stephen, I had a question because of the format of People of Praise. So, People of Praise, the Sword of the Spirit, the Fraternity of Catholic Communities, there's like a whole bunch of groups that came out of the same weekend and the same history. Um, but my question is that the issue I'm seeing with getting people to understand that they're a cult is that they don't have that charismatic leader in the same way as the Moonies or Jonestown or like all these other cults that I've studied. These groups, they have some behind the scene leaders, but they don't have anyone that's like worshipped as a god.
Yep.
So how do
And
you
for
sort of
me, it's not
frame that?
a person who's worshipped as a god that makes the criteria of an
Okay.
authoritarian cult. In fact,
Okay,
there
so
are
what's the difference then?
ideological
Hmm.
authoritarian cults too.
Sure. Hmm. So if it's an authoritarian cult, then it's more about there being like an authoritative system. Is that how you see it?
So in the bite model, I talk about ideology being black and white, all or
Yep.
nothing, good
Yep.
versus evil,
Yep.
simplistic. You're
Yep.
either saved or you're a sinner and you're going
Sure.
to hell kind of
Mhm. Or
notions.
you're better than other Christians.
Oh,
Yeah. Mhm.
elitism for
Yes.
sure. I put that
Tons of
under
elitism. Oh my
emotional.
goodness.
I put that under emotional control. You're special, you're chosen, but then there's a lot of fear and guilt manipulation
Yes.
that
Hmm.
says if you leave, you'll no longer,
Oh my gosh.
have a
Huge.
relationship with God or be,
Or with other people even.
and
Hmm.
then they get into shunning and say, you
Yep.
can't talk to your daughter, you can't talk to your grandchild
Hmm.
because the elders say so, because
Hmm.
they are in
And I
dis.
think that's where the People of Praise and other kind of these covenant communities are a little bit more savvy. Like they have a way in which they don't use that overt language. Like they don't say you have to shun this person. It's not like unfellowshipping in Jehovah's Witness. It's
Disfellowshipping, yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
disfellowshipping. Yeah. So like it's not as overt, but it does still happen. And I think that's part of the reason why this is kind of going to be a little bit harder to get people to see. I mean, I think it's happening, but to get people to see the problem is because they do such a job of being kind of smooth and suave. So,
Yeah, so one thing that I teach in when I do, preventive education and other interviews is don't listen to the words, watch the behaviors,
yeah,
and they may not say you have to be shunned, but talk to the
right.
people who can't see their own children or
Sure.
grandchildren, or they can't see their grandparent in the case of Coral, who wants to see her own kids.
Hmm. Yeah.
You know, where's the forgiveness? Where's the
Right.
charity? Where's the love?
The
Where's the
acceptance.
compassion
Yeah.
that's
Hmm.
supposed to be at the heart of religious faith? But I want to come back to a very important point that you mentioned, Noel, and that is I would love to get some kind of documentation of Barrett's childhood and history, and was her parents leaders in this group. John surmised that they were and that the husband was, but in the world of the law and in the world of
Sure.
media, they want two sources, ideally
Oh
written.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm familiar. Yeah, it's just it's very so that's also where I think Covenant Community is very savvy, is that they really are good at not keeping documentation, if you get what I mean. So
Right, but where I'm at is that if
we'll definitely
I
keep digging.
am being asked to give questions to some senator on the Judiciary
Yeah,
Committee,
it's a big deal for sure.
what do we got
Yeah,
to
and we have
say?
to. Yeah, And
She's
that's why this
actually
is
in this group. She was raised in this group, and
right.
she's denying it. Like, how do
Sure.
we ask the series of questions that can?
Yep. Yep. And I think that we definitely can, push a little bit. Like I have some connections and some others have some connections. We can keep pushing. I don't know what the timeline would be on getting that information, but we'll do our best.
It's the 12th, as far as I know, that the questioning starts, and it's
Right.
going to be
Right.
3 days of
Mm-hmm.
questions.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
we're in the time crunch, which is why when John and I said, "When you want to do it? How soon can we do it? Can we do it tonight?" Let me check my calendar. Okay, let's try it. And hopefully people will watch this recording who can't join us tonight. And maybe some people will email me at freedomofmind.com, my name at freedomofmind, Hassan at freedomofmind.com, or Stephen at freedomofmind.com, because we really need to, if there's proof, we need it ASAP. And hearing from people who can say, I was there, this is what I experienced,
Would you be able to use an affidavit from a former member who claims that they knew her and that her family was a member?
100%. A sworn affidavit witnessed would be powerful. Is the person no longer alive and can't speak for themselves? John?
I don't. I know of possibly one person who might be able to do that.
Okay. Yeah, written is if it's a sworn thing in front, a notarized thing, and an affidavit, it's way better than just the newspaper clipping.
Right.
My opinion.
Right. Gotcha.
Even are you talking about
what you're asking for?
In terms of
Sorry.
proof?
I'm sorry, Paul, I couldn't hear you.
Let me make sure that my audio
Now
is
I
where it
can
needs.
hear you. Yeah, good.
Are you talking about people who can verify that what Coral contends happened to her is real?
Yeah. Yeah, she's suffering a lot of horrible personal attacks, saying she's crazy. I don't know if people got a chance to read my blog or listen to any of the interviews Coral gave, but she was horribly treated. And Paul, I'm meeting you for the very first time. Thank you for your flexibility to hop on at the last minute, because you knew her and her husband, if I can say that. Is that true?
Yeah, I knew him very well. In fact, her husband was, I was probably his closest friend in Corvallis once we joined the community, and we were all trying to figure it out, what it was. And my wife and Kathy at the time were very, very close. We raised kids together. So there's an awful lot.
The meeting.
I guess somebody joined us.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know how we can turn that off, but I will look into that.
Oh, no worries. I'm happy to write answers to specific questions because I saw them in the day to day, and Marty and I had words over the years about how he allowed violence to happen to his family. And back in that day, we were close enough where I had access to him. We built buildings together and things like that. So we had opportunity in the day to day to have conversations about concrete stuff. There's a big difference in the way I acted and Marty acted, and that's concretely the difference. I protected my family, and he loved that women were supposed to submit to men in every detail, and he didn't have an egalitarian sense about that at all, and great harm came to his wife because it empowered him to be domineering.
Yeah.
In many of the ways that Coral alleges, and the shunning was real. The visits, gynecological visits, were real. I don't know what the community I was in the community in Corvallis and in Vancouver, Washington, different branches. I tried again for 5 years in a different branch, hoping to find a better nature, and it was just same stuff, different day. So Where our stories digress is that where I thought it was overpowering, where it tried to trump key accords in a marriage and in a family, I didn't tolerate it. And if it looked like BS, I said, that's BS and it's not happening in my family. And so I was shunned. I was not asked to make the covenant. And one of the major reasons was the principal coordinators were people who were on salary. And I used to say to them, we're out hacking it out in the world here. Why don't you be a man and get a job and show us how to be a good Christian in the world? Anybody can do what you're doing. What I'm doing is hard. And boy, that made me persona non grata for the rest of the time.
Can you talk, Paul, about the demon exorcisms? You know, the things that Carl talked about? Because
So Father Charles Harris, who had been a professor at Notre Dame before he retired to Corvallis, the Philomath area, he was an exorcist in the Catholic tradition. He actually, for the Diocese of Portland, was a Catholic exorcist. And so he was sanctioned by the Catholic Church and that diocese, which is essential if you're a Catholic, and if an exorcism is required. And my sense is that exorcism, the need for exorcism, was invoked entirely too often and without adequate circumstance. And I personally have never seen the need for an exorcism, so I don't know how to characterize that, but I knew the players, and I didn't think an exorcism was warranted. So I thought it was another power tool, and they had a qualified exorcist to do that when circumstances warranted for their benefit. So
yeah, so I wrote about in my book, The Cult of Trump, a network of churches and parachurches called New Apostolic Reformation, and they do things that, so their leader is an apostle or a prophet that gets direct revelations from God, and everyone in the congregation is covered in protection because of them from Satan. And they do laying on of hands and speaking in tongues and casting out demons. And if you want to leave, man, you have a demon that needs to come out. Like that's
right.
the definition. You know, if you question, you know, the order of one of the apostle, then you have a demon. And there's not like, wait a minute, can I disagree? Okay, is there another option here, or is everything spiritualized? And this is a group that has some 30 million Americans in it that are spiritual warriors that think God is using Trump.
Well, and also my understanding of the NAR is that they believe in the 7 mountains.
Yes.
One is culture, one is education,
Dominionism.
one is entertainment. And they believe in the domination of American society by Christian beliefs and concepts and by Christian leaders. So they're hugely theocratic, you know, in that way, and a threat to a democracy.
Absolutely. And Mark Burnett, who recruited Trump for The Apprentice, is supposedly the head of the media
really?
part of the dominionist agenda. And he spoke at another cult function of the family that Michael Pence is in, and introduced Trump at that national prayer breakfast. And I should say my former cult leader was at that meeting way back in the 70s, and then he was brought to support Nixon during Watergate because God wanted Nixon to be president. Yours truly fasted for 3 days for Nixon on the
John makes a really good point, and yet our Constitution protects us from a theocracy, and this is a really key consideration. I have to tell you that I'm no longer affiliated with any organized religion, and neither are my children, but we're still a spiritual family, and we're still on a search for for how to head back into the light, basically, but we're not finding it through organized religion. We're finding it through prayer and meditation and a personal search. And my children, and that for us includes Eastern and Western modalities and reading broadly about what is written by deep wisdom traditions. We keep refining some of the same truths. And I'm happy to say that my children, as adults, they're all in their late 30s and 40s, have survived the charismatic renewal. And they're also, and I protected them during that time. And I think the fact that I behaved different as a man in an egalitarian relationship with my wife, and that I spoke plainly with my children about bullshit when I saw it, however I use better language, was really important to them understanding that they have a personal responsibility for their own search and to study and to pray and be quiet and to learn about what's right. And as I read through your bite bulleted lists, one of the things that I found particularly debilitating in the people of praise was their wholesale rejection of rational analysis, constructive criticism, and the role of critical thinking within families. Sorry?
I really think we need to emphasize that point. I think that's a great point.
It was so harshly, and I was doing my doctoral and postdoctoral work in Corvallis at the time, and I was emphasizing rationality and several forms of reasoning, and thinking, gosh, it's really good stuff. We should expose this to that as well. It was very badly received. We were bad sheep. They want good sheep. They want quiet sheep. And
I was the same thing. I was a bad sheep.
Yeah, I was a bad sheep. So
I was a good sheep for many years.
we made it 10
Oh, but
years,
then, John, you became a very bad sheep.
Paul, do you know John's work? He's written extensively. It's his Facebook, Covenant Communities Facebook that we're.
I've read some of it, John, but certainly not all of it.
I have a feeling you guys will really enjoy talking with each other.
And as a person who is the age of your children, I appreciate what you did for them, because damage is extensive. And
it's called integrity. It's called conscience.
Yes, but that gets so co-opted sometimes. Even people who have integrity and conscience can get, really messed up in these groups,
That's my work.
For a lot
I was a very honest, good person before the Mormon cult.
Yep.
And I got so warped.
Yep.
Thinking that the Koreans were the master race and the Jews needed to die in the Holocaust because they didn't accept Jesus. I'm raised Jewish. Educated about the Holocaust, went to Israel, and I believe that crap.
The most horrible thing is the supposition and the teaching that half of the people in the world are second-class citizens.
More than half.
Well, yeah, but I was infuriated by the idea that in relationship, in marriage, and in dialogue, that believing there's no sense of equanimity in the charismatic renewal or in the teachings of the people of praise. And how can you abide that if in fact you're trying to build a strong relationship with a woman and negotiate the terms of your life with your children? It was an abomination, and every time you tried to raise that point, the conversation was either scuttled or it was trumped by somebody in a position of power. And now imagine Kathy and Marty Warner, Coral now, imagine all of these premises playing into the mind of a guy who wants to be all powerful in his family, who wants to have at-will sex, who wants to have her always say, yes, Mark, whatever you need all of the time. He became in many ways an uncontrollable predator as a consequence of being licensed to ignore the spirit and the character of Kathy at the time. And I told him to act out. I told him to be a man and to discuss the dark side of this and how it's influenced his family. And he would just repeat the crap that he was hearing, and after a while he would turn a jaundiced eye toward me that maybe I was bad seed. So,
Yeah.
So Paul, you're so articulate and you're making such great points. I only wish you had a better microphone because you're going in and out a little bit. We may need to do another recording with you with a better mic because you're so articulate, so important. The points that you're making from firsthand experience. And I just want to comment that the stereotypical profile of cult leaders is called malignant narcissism.
Narcissism.
Not just narcissist, but sociopathic,
Yeah.
thinking they're above the law. I'm going to take 1 minute and read from my book, Chapter 3, where I compare Donald Trump with Jim Jones, Hubbard, and Moon, and a few
Fun.
other cult leaders. Grandiose, self-centered behavior, fantasies of power, success, and attractiveness, need for praise and admiration, sense of entitlement, lack of empathy, antisocial behavior, thinking you're above the law, pathological lying, interpersonally exploitative, sadistic, harassing and silencing, violent, paranoid, and inability to trust friends and subordinates. How's that? This is Eric Fromm's list
Yep.
on malignant narcissism, and look who's the president of the United States of
Oh,
America.
definitely.
no stone unturned there.
And it sounds like Coral's ex-husband was a malignant narcissist to me.
Well, and I think that might be, instead of having that top leader, I think that's sort of what Covenant Community preys on, is like finding men who are susceptible to like that way of thinking or that desire for power, which all of us have a susceptibility for, right? We're human, and then preying on that. I had two quick thoughts. Paul, just a really random side note. I actually worked in Africa for 3 years with the Catholic Charismatic Renewal, and it actually is egalitarian.
Yeah.
And they don't have it's actually really beautiful, because as long as you have good, strong discipleship training, you're allowed to teach, you're allowed to lead, and like women are really respected and like in leadership positions, and there's none of this like hierarchical bullshit, which was really beautiful and also really strange. And it was really freeing for me as a woman to like, I went to Africa and was finally allowed to use the gifts I have, which is kind of insane.
Right.
But that's a side note. But also, Stephen, one thing I wanted to kind of say is another area that you could actually find some good questions for Amy Coney Barrett is actually within the covenant. So if she made that covenant commitment, she cannot lie under oath about the commitment she swore, right? So we have the covenant of the people of praise. So you could probably go in there and find some really big quotes and like have a senator read those out and be like, did you ever promise this to this group?
If anyone can help do that,
Sure.
that would
The
be
other thing-
wonderful, because I don't
the other
have
thing
the
we can
time
probably-
to
yeah, sure,
go through
sure.
source documentation. I've been
Yeah,
getting
and that's where
names.
we can probably, like, I think John is a nerd on this, and think we have some other people who could help. And we might even be able to put a call out to the group for anyone with some spare time. And the other place we could look is in teaching documents. So I'm not sure if we have many of them from People of Praise, but I'm pretty sure that if we put out a general call, we could probably find some of their teaching documents. And we could easily, like, and because this stuff is in writing in their teachings. Does that make sense? Like,
100%. Always
so John,
documents.
does that make sense?
Yeah, documents from within the group
Mm-hmm.
itself is incredibly important and valuable.
Because I feel like if we can't find the people in this short time frame, we could find the quotes and like use their own material against them. John, what do you think about that?
And ideally ask questions that if she lies and we can
Right,
prove that
that's
she
what I mean. Yeah,
lies.
specifically with the covenant and with the teachings that we would know someone who was in community would have gone through. That's like, if she says no to that, that is like very clearly not the case. As long as we have some kind of proof or evidence that she did make a covenant commitment to People of Praise.
She
Which I
is
think-
covenanted. I think that's Brainiac, Noel. I think it's.
Sorry, what?
I think she is covenanted,
Okay,
and
that's what I thought.
it's a Brainiac suggestion, and I think it should be an exhibit during the Q&A process
Yes.
and present up front as saying, here is the covenant of the people of praise, and then frame a few carefully selected questions that literally are undeniably things
Yes.
you must swear to, right?
Yep. And we have the covenant. And I mean, John, we have it, right? I just looked it up, right?
It was just published in 2018 online. It's the first time any document from the People of Praise has been up there. The problem with getting documentation goes way back. Julia Doohan wrote an article that she published just tonight. And it's she put a link to it up on the website, on the CovCom website.
Yep, I saw that.
And they go back into the history and they give quotes about being unable to get documents from the People of Praise, that they've always been secretive, and they've always believed in right speech, which is never a good sign.
That's a big buzzword.
Yeah. So to find any documentation from People of Praise is like finding gold.
Yeah.
We did get one document that I have seen recently. It's called something in purpose, Spirit and Purpose of the People of Praise.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an old document too that a former member produced. And I've got a copy of it. Stephen, you may have a copy, but I've been looking through that. And there's some information in there that we could turn into questions.
It's going to take a village, so I'm counting on you, John, Noel, Paul, other people, to kind of like get the nuggets. And I love
Noel, we can talk about later about maybe doing, another meeting, another Zoom meeting with our crew. And
so Saturday at 1, Frank Cocazelli is available. If you watch the video of him, he's a Catholic attorney who is on my blog, or Sunday at 2. Those were his 2 windows.
So John, let's get a call out to the group as much as possible. So the Facebook algorithm is that the more you post, the more people they're going to show it to you on your timeline. So I'm thinking like multiple times a day we need to be posting, and just you can make a note in the post that says like, no, this is going to be annoying, but you're working the Facebook algorithm here. Like we have to work the system.
Well, I posted 4 or 5 things today, and I felt like I was being too controlling.
And you're welcome to come to FOM Inc. for Freedom of Mind Inc. is my Facebook page, and post. It's a public page, and there are lots of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and all kinds of other groups that are on there.
Yep. And we can make sure to let people know, especially in the CovCom group, that they don't have to have their names associated with it. It's like, even if you just have like the notes from one of your documents or something like that, like that kind of thing. So, yeah.
It's great. It's wonderful. I'm very grateful.
I think there's also the requirement and the spirit and purpose of the People of Praise that they strictly adhere to the Nicene Creed is also a non-trivial point as well. So it might be interesting to pull a point or two out of that creed as being sort of requisite to framing what it means to be a People of Praise community member.
Can you say a little bit more, Paul, about what you mean? That's the nugget in that.
So the Nicene Creed has been, it's gone through evolution since like 300 AD to even the 19th century. And in the early Christian communities, there was great variety in how the way was lived. And that became an uncomfortable solution to people who wanted to formalize Christianity, right? So increasingly, they rooted out other forms to produce one common form through the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Trent, right?
Right.
And so it seems to me that adherence to a highly refined version of Christianity is a non-trivial part of the structure of Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of that is captured in that creed.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, people who struggle with the virgin birth are outcasts in Christianity, and a lot of the rites and rituals that are surrounding that are outcasts. So there's a fairly strict adherence to that's pro forma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The so-called literalists, inerrant word of God. We got to, take this black and white conformist, creed, as you rightly said. Thank you for explaining more, Paul, what you were.
I think another critical part of the history is, I don't remember if you recall Kevin Ranahan and Steve Clark. I was raised as a child in the charismatic renewal in the late 60s and 70s, starting in 66. And a lot of it was half-baked at the time. The conversation was more fluid. And as Paul rightly said, men and women were considered co-equals in the early renewal. And that was relegated to bad form later on in the renewal. And Stephen Clark wrote a book, I believe it was called Man and Woman in Christ. I don't know if you ever read it. It was kind of a tome. But he sort of set the foundation for
That thing is horrendous. Sorry. That book is a horrendous book.
That's literally my point, though. That's my point.
Oh my God, it's so bad.
He formalized that men were superior to women, and how in the day-to-day and in community life that was to be practiced. And Kevin Ranahan was a looser guy who was also part of the original formulation of the renewal in the 60s. And they eventually parted company. There was a schism. And so my point would be great to talk to Kevin Ranahan about what the sticking points in that schism were at the time, because I believe he would point to these issues we're discussing.
And I want to just say that Barrett is being put up to take Judge Ginsburg's role, which was exactly for women's
Exactly. And they're trying to call her like the new feminist icon, which is such bullshit.
So I think that's a very important point, Paul, that needs to be brought out in hearings as well.
Yeah.
Well, and I think what we can make a direct line from Steve Clark and his way of thinking to the founders of the People of Praise, which would then like very much inform sort of the covenanted way of life, even if it's not documented in terms of men's and women's roles. If we can't get that documentation from People of Praise in writing, we know that that's like a direct line. Does that make sense?
You bet. That's why mentioning that book is critical.
Yeah, yes, I think so too. Yeah.
Go ahead, Abby. Abby spoke up.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think a lot of times they kind of use rhetoric like men and women are equal but have different roles. So I think it's important to look at different rhetoric like that as well.
Yes, very much so. There's a lot of like nodding to egalitarianism while still encouraging like the sort of like not actual egalitarian style. Yeah.
There are also, I guess, people who have participated in the People of Praise Marriage in Christ program. And it might be good to put out a call.
And they would have a binder from that. They would get like a thing of written materials for sure.
Right.
That's excellent.
So if we could collect that information, and I'll put this stuff up on the page that we're looking for this, and we'll get on it.
I'm so grateful. Thank you, John. Thank you, Paul. Noelle, you've contributed a lot. I have
Stephen,
a few more minutes.
Someone for you to talk to who's willing to talk. She was involved like 9 or 10 years ago, but she's still willing to connect briefly if that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. Send people to Freedom of Mind. I have hundreds of videos that are free up if people want to understand more about the whole models of other cults and how they operate. And I don't know if anyone has watched HBO's The Vow. It's very hot right now because the leader is in jail for 7 felony counts of trafficking.
Wow.
His abuse of women. in the name of women
Of
empowerment
course.
programs, and connecting the dots in terms of the public consciousness
Yep.
that here's Nexium, here are some similar
Yep.
features to People for Praise, or
Yep.
here's, you know
Yep.
what I mean? To
Well, and
connect
then
the
we
dots.
in Michigan we have a sexual predator who is part of the sort of the spirit, who is protected by them, and like and is very much sort of similar to the Nassar in at MSU, Larry Nassar, who abused many children.
Oh
Um,
yes, my
so I
son's a
think that this is kind
gymnast.
of
I
like,
know
yeah,
about
yep, exactly. So
Nasser.
this I think this is kind of a time of like things coming up and reckoning and such.
So,
Stephen, a kind of side question, and not so side because I do think we're going to have victims who are going to need help. Do you have any training for working with clients who come out of this?
do I do training, you mean?
Yeah. Do you have a book or training for working for clinicians working with people coming out of cults?
So I'm actually doing a course, an online course for Udemy, but it's not quite ready. We got the
Okay.
PowerPoints, but I have to record it. But this is the foundational book that came out in 1988 that
Okay.
tells my
Yep.
story. And this is my book on how to help people that you care
Okay.
about to start thinking critically and
Great.
empowering them.
Okay.
And then the cult of Trump. I have
Yes.
a psychiatry grand rounds that I did at Harvard Medical
Wow.
School. I have a 1 hour, primer for clinicians, and I'm
Okay.
willing to give you the link so you
That
can
would be great.
look at
John and I
that.
are both mental health clinicians, and I think that's actually going to play quite a role in this because
I've
I
been
think as we do more of this work, more people are going to need help, and we're going to need clinicians to have the resources.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the DSM-5 and the DSM-4 and the DSM-3 has dissociative disorders 300.15
Yep.
explicitly talks about brainwashing, cults, thought reform, and identity disturbance, but most mental health professionals have no training
Right.
and
Exactly. Yeah.
they really mess people up
Right. I
with good
agree.
intentions, but they
Yeah.
don't understand what they're doing
Well,
and they
and
don't.
then I keep having clients who come see me, and no one has ever talked to them about religious trauma syndrome or like
They're
basically
talking
PTSD
about
for.
Marlene Winnell's work, Leaving the
Yes. Yep.
Fold, which
Yep.
is a valuable
Exactly.
contribution.
And there's actually some other work out there on it, and basically the way that I look at it is that it's just PTSD specific for people who've been in certain kinds of religious environments.
Yep.
So if that's a direction you ever want to take, there's a huge need. We would pay money, whatever's
Oh no,
needed.
I'm 66 years old and I want to pass on my knowledge to
Yeah, and it's
younger
really needed. It's really
therapists
needed.
and especially former members who
Yes.
have had an experience are
Right.
particularly empowered in terms of
Yes.
working because
Yep.
they have that depth of personal stories, the
Exactly.
empathy,
Yep.
100%. Um, it is a niche, but we're talking about millions of people worldwide that have been
Yeah. Exactly.
exposed to authoritarian abuse. So, and it's not just religious, it can be a multi-level marketing group, a political
Exactly. Because
cult.
Nexium wasn't necessarily religious, right?
It
Like
was absolutely was not. It was
it
a
was secular. Yeah.
coaching
And I
MLM-ish.
think a lot of these MLMs actually are very much becoming cults, and I think no one's really talking about that.
Well, the deceptive recruitment, the high pressure, the lying about how successful they are, the listening constantly to tapes, the magical thinking that
Yep.
if you just pray and believe 100%, you're going to make millions of dollars. That's a whole bite model
Yep.
analysis that
Yep.
fits the MLMs.
Yep.
And I want to just say that when I'm interviewed, I say we're not living in a post-truth world. We're living in the age of influence.
Yes.
Truth is still truth. Facts are facts. And there are forces, including the Christian right and Russia and neo-Nazis and others that want to cause confusion, disorientation, distrust of leaders, distrust of institutions, so they can take over. So, and it's called a psyops, a psychological operation. that I describe in The Cult of Trump that's happening today. And we have to get back to like what Paul was saying, my conscience, my common sense, my ability to be assertive, to say this is wrong, this is not good behavior, stop it. You know?
Stephen, I would like to you to consider maybe doing another one of these Zoom calls later this week, if that's possible.
Yeah, I will. I'm
Definitely.
also proposing Saturday at 1 Eastern
Right, with
and
the
Sunday at
yeah, that would actually be really
2,
good with the attorney. Yeah.
because I'd like Frank. Frank's brilliant. He helped me a lot gathering information about Opus Dei when I
Yeah.
realized that Leonard Leo and William
Oh
Barr
my
were
gosh, that stuff
involved
was
with Opus Dei.
craziness.
So I
Oh,
put the Cult of Trump book.
I have so many friends who are in Opus Dei. Oh,
It's a problematic, authoritarian, secretive
Yeah.
group,
Yeah.
and I I read in the Globe today, the Boston Globe, an article about the Pope's encyclical that just came out, and I haven't gone more than the Boston Globe. But I loved what was being described as like we need to get out of this massive materialistic mentality, out of the division and hatred
yep.
and fear, realize we're all together on one
It's about
planet.
actual friendship, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was like we
That's
need
it.
more leaders to speak up for values and common sense and rational thinking
Are
and
you
an
familiar with the
autonomy
Poor
that we.
People's Movement?
I'm sorry,
Are you familiar with the Poor People's Campaign?
I'm not.
Reverend Reverend Dr. William Barber
I know
and
that
Jonathan
name.
Wilson Hartgrove. Reverend Dr. William Barber just won the MacArthur Genius Grant.
Okay,
But he's the leader of the new Poor People's Movement. So right when Martin Luther King died, he was about to launch the Poor People's Campaign. So Dr. Barber has actually relaunched it, and it's exactly what you're talking about.
great. Well,
It's like the
I'm
whole
going
thing.
to need to go now, but I'm
Yep, no,
so
it's fine.
grateful to have this connection. Paul, I'm so happy you were able to cancel whatever your other appointments so you could join us. And I really hope you can be in on the next one and maybe get a microphone where the sound is a little better, because it was like going in and out a bit. And because I really would like your audio to be really clear.
Could you say your email again, Stephen?
Hassan, Hassan, at freedomofmind.com.
Thank you.
And my website is freedomofmind.com.
I'll connect by phone as well next time, and I'll stop video, and maybe that will help. Can I ask a really simple question, but it's of paramount importance for me? As a practicing spiritual person, one of the things that caused me the most concern during my People of Praise days was the fact that when I actually prayed and I shut up and I listened and I got quiet, I was very much influenced by the positive aspect of prayer and meditation. And what I was learning was completely contrary to what was coming in by the People of Praise. Is not that an authentic part of giving witness to what might be incredibly screwed up about it? I really was wondering how best to be a good man and a good family and to take care of my wife and to be co-equal with her. And so I really prayed, and I learned how to meditate as a young man. And what I learned was coming out of that quiet, rich resources and quietude come, and there were no match for what was coming from the teaching. To me, that was primary in my standing up for my family and standing against the People of Praise. And to me, that was job one as a man.
I
It
think
was,
that's beautiful. And didn't the New Testament, didn't Jesus talk about going into the closet to pray instead
yeah,
of
getting
like,
quiet,
yeah?
listening.
So
So
I wanna suggest that maybe Paul, you and John, and if Noel's willing to like do a video to active members of People of Praise 'Cause I bet there are people who are doubting and having questions, and to just kind of have a message of, hey, there's life and there's
Yeah,
spirituality outside of the group.
yeah. That'd be an, that yeah, it'd be an interesting endeavor for sure.
That's the
That
whole
may be
purpose of the
best too.
CovCom page.
Hmm.
Say it again.
That's the whole purpose of the Covenant Community page on Facebook that I created 9 years ago. Was so that people outside of, it's a public group, so people who are still members of Covenant Communities and other groups can read what's posted there and have a sense that there's life outside Covenant Community. So
Beautiful.
it's been my mission the entire time.
It's beautiful.
Would you be available Thursday night, Steve? Like again at what time is it there? 7:15? If we were to put this up on the page and invite people again,
Let me just check my calendar. No, I'm afraid I'm got an appointment from
any night, Wednesday night at all, tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night I could do.
Okay,
Oh,
We can also
actually,
look
I
at the
promised
weekend.
my wife and son we would have dinner on Wednesday nights. So I
okay.
can't do it then.
So you can't do it tomorrow night?
Yeah, I apologize.
No, that's fine. That's fine. How about Friday sometime, maybe during the day, like at 4 o'clock or?
For my time, I could do.
Friday at 4?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to, at least this week before the nomination goes to the floor, the more heat and the more,
Well, I'm saying let's do it on Saturday. You know,
okay.
once
Well, I
a
was hoping maybe to get another one in before
two
Saturday.
more. If you see how many people respond on the group, if you can get 4 or 5 new people, I think, and Paul, if you can be on, you've been fantastic contributor, really. I'll do my best.
Sure. Okay,
Thank
just a
you,
question.
everybody. I'm
All
going.
right.
I'm going to put this up on my YouTube. I'll give you the link. You can post it on your Facebook page.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your time, Stephen, and you, Paul. Thank you for your testimony.
So much, everybody. Appreciate it. Have
And
a good one.
bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.